The writing process can be long and exhausting, but knowing these tips, whether you haven't written a word or you're already well into writing your book, will make the journey 1,000 times easier. Hi, I'm Sarah, one of the owners of Third Wheel Publishing, where we help authors with or without an agent get their books into the hands of readers. Now, I've been writing for most of my life and have been through writing workshops, writing courses, all of it. I started off as an editor, then moved on to being a ghostwriter, and now I've finally broken out into feeling confident about writing my own books. There are so many things that I wish I knew when I first started that I've come to learn over the years, and I wanted to share them with you because so many people have helped me get to where I am today, and I want to give a little back. So here are some tips to help you become a better writer. Writing is learned. And I know this really isn't an actionable tip, but so many people think that great writers are born with a skill inherently built in, but that's not true. They had to learn and work at it. You know, for some people, it comes easier than for others, but everyone has to start somewhere, and you can always learn and progress. If you're bad at grammar, study grammar. If you struggle with over-explaining, try to do exercises to help you be more succinct in your writing. Now, you aren't going to magically learn how to write. You have to work at it. Pick a tense and stick to it. You know, part of writing is learning about consistency, and picking a tense for the entire book helps keep your readers engaged and your story smooth. When it comes to tenses, you really have two main options: past tense and present tense. Don't choose one or the other just because you've heard someone say, that's what I prefer to read. You know, choose what's best for your story. Past tense feels more natural because that's how most people tend to tell a story. You know, they tell it in a way that what's going on already happened. Past tense would be like saying she walked into the room and shut the door. Now, present tense, on the other hand, creates a sense of urgency and makes the reader feel more like they are in the story. And that would be like saying she walks into the room and shuts the door. Unless there's a clear reason to shift your tense, such as a flashback or internal thoughts, try to stick to the tense that you've initially chosen. It'll make the story flow a lot better. Develop your characters. This is a big one. Not only do you want to develop characters with their own personality and characteristics, you want your characters to develop throughout the story as a whole. Not every character should sound exactly the same unless your story has a theme of taking away individuality. This isn't to say that each character has to speak drastically different from each other. It's as simple as if you were to ask someone to describe your characters, they could easily pick out their unique traits. So perhaps one of your characters is more likely to take the brunt of confrontation. Meanwhile, another character is really smart and funny, and it's better if you can give them more than one trait so they aren't so one-dimensional. Each character should be easily identifiable, but your main character or characters need to develop as the story goes on. They need to have a place where they begin and change in one way or another by the end of the book. Perhaps your main character is on a journey of discovering their true strength, or perhaps your character goes from needing power and validation to feel worthy, to accepting that they won't get that approval from their family, but it shouldn't negate their happiness in the end. A character's arc is an important part of the book, and it really should not be overlooked. Build your world. Your world is a carefully designed stage where every element, from the setting and the culture to the technology and weather, should work together like pieces of a puzzle. It isn't just about cool setting or inventing magic systems. It's when you're writing or debating a particular element, you should be thinking, does this feel like it belongs here? Does this feel like it belongs in my story? And I'm sure you've read or heard of stories where in this medieval fantasy world, there's some random futuristic gadget that just doesn't fit and pulls you out of the story. That's what we don't want. Every detail should fit within this world that you're building. Focus on the small details and make sure they help bring the bigger picture to life. You want to immerse your readers so completely that they wish they could be a part of this world, or maybe they're happy that they aren't. Check your facts. And this is pretty self-explanatory. If you're basing anything in your book on real events, people, or anything of that sort, make sure you do your due diligence and put in the research time. If you're taking a real event and fictionalizing it, make sure to include a disclosure so you don't get a lot of backlash for something that was intentional. The world is already so critical of writers, you don't want to give them an extra reason to target you. Stop stereotyping. Readers want real characters, not copy and pasted tropes. If your characters feel like they've been plucked straight from a template, it's time to rethink. You should be challenging expectations. People know what the stereotypical version of your character is. Twist those common tropes and keep your characters fresh and unpredictable. The story will be a lot more interesting that way. If you're writing about a culture, identity, or experience outside of your own, take the time to learn about it. You want to try to avoid representing them in a stereotypical or cliche way, and that just goes along with doing your research. Dissolve filler, and I don't mean the injection. Filler isn't just about long descriptions or pointless dialogue. It's anything that doesn't move the plot forward, develop a character, or add to the story's atmosphere. Every scene should have a purpose, and if it doesn't reveal something about a character or move the story forward, it's probably filler. In that same regard, cut the redundant conversations. People don't want to see characters continue to greet each other, say goodbye, or engage in a lot of small talk. Unless it serves a purpose, it doesn't need to be there. Taking up space is not a good reason to put something in your book. Excessive descriptions should also be cut down. It's okay to set the scene, but things like describing the exact shade of the sky will probably take the reader out of the story. I like to say that we want to keep it vivid but concise. Structure your chapters. A good chapter isn't just a random chunk of story, it has purpose and makes the reader need to keep reading. One of the best feelings is reading a book where the chapters just flow with each one pulling you into the next. The writer doesn't do that by accident. Well-structured chapters keep the readers engaged and make your book impossible to put down. Each chapter should have a clear purpose. Much like our discussion about filler, it should either move the plot forward, reveal something important about a character, or build tension. A great chapter ending really leaves the reader with a push to continue on to the next chapter. Pace your plot. Good pacing isn't about speed. It's knowing when to slow things down for depth and when to speed things up for excitement. Your opening should grab attention without info dumping. And if there's no conflict, the pace will drag. Every scene should have a why, creating a reason for readers to stay engaged. If the stakes are clear and the tension is high, the reader will definitely want to stick around and finish reading the book. A big thing that a lot of writers struggle with is that your backstory shouldn't be dumped all at once. You should be revealing details when they're relevant and impactful to the plot. Readers want to discover as they read. And don't forget to end your chapters with momentum. Kind of leave things slightly unresolved because a well-paced plot keeps your reader hooked from start to finish. If it moves too slow, they get bored. However, if it moves too fast, they start to feel disconnected. You need to find your balance and make sure every scene pulls its weight. At the end of the day, pacing is what keeps the reader turning the pages. Have intentional points of view. Who's telling the story matters as well as why. Choosing the right point of view is more than a technical decision. It shapes how the reader experiences the story. Don't listen to what point of view people prefer to read in. Choose the one that is right for your story. A first-person perspective makes things personal and intimate. Meanwhile, a third-person perspective offers more of a broad perspective. Then you have limited point of view, which keeps readers inside one character's head, while omniscient lets them see everything. It all depends on what your story needs. Not only should you choose the best point of view for your story, you should be consistent. If you're writing in limited third person, don't suddenly jump into another character's thought without a scene break. In the same vein, if you're in first person perspective, don't reveal things that your narrator couldn't possibly know. Now, if you have multiple points of view, each perspective should serve the story. It should add a new layer to the plot. If a character's perspective doesn't bring something valuable, it might not be needed. A well-chosen point of view can heighten the suspense or deepen the impact. Your point of view isn't just a tool. It should feel like the only way that the story could be told. The point of view shapes the story. If something feels off, it might be your point of view. Show, don't tell. You've probably heard this a million times, but what does it actually mean and how you do it? Telling makes your writing flat and lifeless, while showing makes it more immersive, emotional, and real. Things like instead of saying she was nervous, show her tapping her foot, avoiding eye contact, or fidgeting with her sleeves. Readers don't just want to know, they want to see and feel and experience what's happening. You shouldn't just describe what things look like either, because there are other factors, other elements. What do they smell like, sound like? So instead of saying the alley was scary, describe the flickering streetlight, distant ominous sounds, or often unsettling smells. These same concepts go for things like describing body language and dialogue as well. The reader should be given the chance to infer a character's emotions. Trust your readers to just get it. Sometimes telling is okay. Like if your character takes a cab across town, you don't need to describe every street they pass. So you need to learn when to show for impact versus telling for efficiency. On this same topic, don't have the character ask themselves a whole bunch of questions, whether internally or externally, in order to tell the reader their emotional state or things that the reader should be able to infer from the story. Showing brings your story to life. It makes readers feel like they're right there with the characters. The more you show, the more your world feels real. I could go on and on with writing tips, but these are definitely some that came across my mind as ones that are important and that I see a lot of writers tend to struggle with. And if I had to pick one that is my top tip, it would probably be show, don't tell. So go back and listen to that section. Thanks for watching. I hope these tips give you something to keep in mind while you're writing. And if you finished your book and are looking to publish, whether you have an agent or you don't, feel free to reach out and see if we're accepting any new books. With that, I'll see you in the next one.